She slammed her hand on my truck window and screamed, "Step out of the vehicle! You're under arrest!" Her voice echoed through the quiet suburban street. Two men in fake uniforms stood behind her, hands resting awkwardly on cheap-looking holsters. I looked at them, then at her, and said calmly, "On what charge?" She smirked like she'd just won something. "Violation of HOA security rules. You've been parking here illegally for months." I almost laughed. "This is my driveway." But the woman, Karen as the neighborhood called her, crossed her arms and nodded toward the men. "Officers, do your job. Take him in. He's trespassing." The fake cop stepped closer, trying to look official. One of them muttered, "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" But Karen snapped, "I run this neighborhood. He doesn't belong here." I could see my neighbor peeking through his curtains, his phone already out. A few kids on bikes had stopped at the corner, whispering. Everything felt slow for a second, the type of calm you feel before a storm. I stepped out slowly, hands raised a little. "You boys want to see my ID first?" Karen rolled her eyes. "Don't bother showing him anything. You're a civilian, not law enforcement." That's when I smiled. "You sure about that?" Her face twitched. "Don't play games with me. I know fake badges when I see one." I reached into my wallet and pulled out a simple leather case. Black, old, but clean. I flipped it open just enough for the two men to see. Their eyes widened instantly. One of them took a full step back. Karen frowned. "What are you looking at?" "Arrest him." The taller one stammered, Ma'am, maybe we should do it," she shouted. And that's when I said quietly, "Ma'am, you just ordered 2 impersonators to detain a federal agent." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The color drained from her face. The 2 fake cops froze, unsure whether to run or salute. I took one step closer, keeping my voice calm. "Where'd you get the badges?" "eBay costume store." One of them panicked and blurted, "She paid us $50 to scare you." The whole street went silent. Karen's eyes went wide as she hissed, "You idiots!" I turned my phone camera on. "So, let me get this straight. You showed up on federal property with fake police and tried to make an arrest because you don't like my truck?" She yelled, "It's not federal property. This is my neighborhood. We have rules here." "Funny," I said, unlocking the door behind me, "because this house sits on an exempt parcel. The HOA's jurisdiction ends 2 houses down." Her jaw dropped. "That's not possible." "I checked the records myself." "Then you didn't check the federal records." For a second, she stood frozen, her voice breaking between rage and confusion. You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted. "And you just tried to arrest an active FBI agent on his own property." Karen stumbled back, muttering something about misunderstanding. The fake cops slowly removed their toy handcuffs, trying to fade away. But I'd already called the real police. "Stay right here," I said, pointing to the ground. "You'll want to explain this yourself." Her voice turned shaky. "Look, I didn't mean any harm. I was just enforcing the rules. Rules don't work above the law," I said. "And pretending to have power you don't. That's called a crime." A siren wailed in the distance. She turned pale. The fake officers whispered something and bolted toward their car. But it was too late. As the real squad pulled up, Karen whispered under her breath, "You think you're better than everyone else." I looked her straight in the eye. "No, ma'am. I just don't pretend to be someone I'm not." For the first time, she had no comeback. The real officers stepped out, recognizing me instantly. One of them nodded. "Agent Miller, you okay here?" "Just fine," I said, glancing at Karen. "But she's got some explaining to do." Karen froze as the cops turned toward her, questions already flying. My camera kept rolling, every second of her arrogance caught in full color. And as they started taking statements, I couldn't help thinking, what makes some people crave power so bad they'll fake authority to get it? Have you ever met someone who acted like they owned everything, just because they could? Karen stood there trembling, trying to come up with excuses as the officers started questioning her. "It was just a misunderstanding," she repeated. "I thought he was breaking HOA regulations." One of the real officers raised an eyebrow. "You thought impersonating law enforcement was part of your HOA duties?" Karen's lips quivered. "They told me it was fine. They said they worked for neighborhood security." The shorter officer looked at me. "Agent Miller, do you want to press charges?" I paused for a moment, watching her. The same woman who had been shouting at me 5 minutes ago was now trying to act innocent, hands shaking. "Not yet," I said calmly. "But I'd like her statement recorded." Karen turned to me, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Agent or not, you have no right to threaten me. This is harassment." I crossed my arms. "Harassment? You showed up with fake cops and tried to put me in handcuffs. I didn't know," she snapped, eyes darting around the neighbors gathering to watch. "You think you're special just because you flashed that little badge of yours?" The taller fake cop, now handcuffed himself, shouted, "She's the one who hired us." "Said she was the HOA president and wanted to teach you a lesson," Karen gasped. "That's a lie." But the officer already had his body cam running. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station." Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't arrest me. I'm part of the community board." "That's not a government position," the officer replied dryly. The whole neighborhood whispered. People recorded from their porches, some even cheering quietly. For months, everyone had been scared of her. Her letters, her fake rules, her threats to fine people for parking too long or painting fences off-color. As they led her toward the squad car, she twisted her head toward me. "This isn't over. I'll sue you." I smiled faintly. "You might want to check who's handling your case first." Her eyes flicked with panic. "What do you mean?" "I work with the division that investigates impersonation and fraud." She froze. The realization hit her like a wave. Every ounce of arrogance vanished. The officer nudged her forward. "Ma'am, let's go." When they drove off, the street fell quiet. A few neighbors clapped softly. One man said, "About time someone stood up to her." I nodded but didn't feel proud, just tired. Power makes people do crazy things, and this time she picked the wrong person to mess with. That night, as I sat on my porch, a neighbor walked over holding a folder. "You might want to see this," he said. Inside were photocopies, HOA letters, fake fines, threats. She's been running this place like her personal kingdom. I flipped through them, realizing just how deep her fake authority went. She wasn't just annoying, she was dangerous. She'd been collecting fees from homeowners that didn't even exist. And when I saw the names on the payment list, something clicked. One of them belonged to a retired Navy captain, another to a local judge. It wasn't about me anymore. She'd scammed half the street, and no one had the courage to stop her. Until now. I looked at the folder again, then at my badge on the table. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was official. The question was, how deep did her little HOA operation really go? The next morning, I drove to the county records office with that folder under my arm. The receptionist barely looked up when I asked, "Can you pull all property filings under this HOA's name?" She typed a few things, frowned, and said, "That's strange. There's no registered HOA for that area." I leaned closer. "None at all?" She shook her head. "Not for the past 15 years. That confirmed it. Karen had built an entire fake HOA from scratch, printed letters, fake seals, and even bank accounts under the name Lakeview Residential Association. She'd been collecting money from neighbors for years, and no one questioned it because she acted like she had authority. On my way out, I got a call from Detective Ramos, the officer from last night. "Miller, you'll want to come down here. We ran the fake cops. One's got priors for fraud. The other says Karen paid him through a neighborhood account." I drove straight to the station. Ramos met me at the door, holding a small evidence bag with an HOA stamp inside. "Recognize this?" I nodded. "She posted one on my door last week." He grinned. "Fake seal, fake organization, real money. She's been cashing HOA checks into her own account." I sighed. "How many people are we talking?" "Maybe 20, 30 families," Ramos said. "She made herself president of an HOA that doesn't exist." That hit hard. The arrogance wasn't just annoying, it was criminal. I asked to see her file. Inside were dozens of complaint letters from neighbors. Ignored. Shredded or returned with fines attached. By noon, I was back in my driveway, watching a city truck remove the fake HOA sign she'd planted at the entrance. A small crowd had gathered, whispering. Someone called out, "Did you really work for the FBI?" I nodded slightly. "Yeah," the old man laughed. "Well, son, glad someone finally took her down." But I wasn't done. There was one more piece that didn't fit. According to the records, Karen had filed multiple community improvement grants under her fake HOA, and someone at the county had approved them. That meant she had help. That night, I logged into the Bureau's system and cross-checked the grant paperwork. The signature at the bottom wasn't hers. It belonged to a mid-level clerk from the zoning department. Same last name. Wells Karen's maiden name? Well, she wasn't working alone. Her cousin was inside the county office, approving her fake grants and funneling public money into private accounts. Suddenly, it all made sense. Her confidence, her fake authority, her threats. She believed she was untouchable because her family was helping her from the inside. I leaned back in my chair and whispered, "You picked the wrong neighborhood, Karen." The next step wasn't just revenge anymore. It was a federal case. I called Ramos. "We're going to need a warrant for financial records and county correspondence." He paused. "Think she's part of something bigger?" "I know she is," I said. "And tomorrow we'll prove it." That night I couldn't sleep. From my porch I saw her house dark and silent, police tape across the driveway. But I knew she wasn't done. People like her never think they're guilty. They think they're victims. And sure enough, around midnight I noticed a shadow near my mailbox. A figure in a hoodie crouched down, sliding something inside. I grabbed my flashlight and walked out quietly. The figure turned, Karen's cousin. He froze. I held the light steady. "Looking for trouble, Mr. Wells?" He didn't answer, just bolted down the street. I opened the mailbox. Inside was a letter addressed to me. One line stood out. "Back off or the next one won't be fake." I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just fraud anymore. It was turning into something darker. By morning, I'd already sent the threat letter to forensics. The message was short, but it said enough. Back off or the next one won't be fake. That meant Karen's cousin wasn't bluffing. He knew I was close to exposing everything. I met Detective Ramos at the precinct. He tossed a folder on the table. We traced the fake HOA's bank transfers. Money went from residents into a shell account. Guess who opened it? Wells, I said. He nodded. And guess whose name appeared as a secondary signature? I frowned. Karen? Yep. She and her cousin pulled over $100,000 in community funds. Half of it came from senior residents. I stared at the papers, feeling my stomach turn. They weren't just greedy, they were predators, pretending to be authority figures while stealing from the people they bullied. Ramos looked at me carefully. "You want in on the bust?" I smirked. Wouldn't miss it. That evening, we rolled up quietly in 2 unmarked cars. Karen's house looked almost peaceful. White fence, flowers trimmed perfectly, a flag swaying in the front yard. But the calm was fake, just like everything else about her. We moved in fast. I knocked once. "FBI, open the door." No answer. We kicked it open. Papers flew from the table, her laptop screen still glowing with bank statements. Karen spun around from her desk, eyes wide. "You can't be here." "I have rights." "You sure?" I said, holding up the warrant. "You've been stealing from this community for years." "I didn't steal. I was maintaining order." She screamed. "They needed someone to take charge. By faking an HOA? By scamming your neighbors." Her cousin tried to run from the back door, but froze when he saw the officers waiting outside. Karen started shaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Ramos handcuffed her gently. "That's what they all say." I stood there, watching her once powerful expression melt into panic. "You built an empire on fear," I said quietly. "And now it's crumbling." She turned her head, eyes full of resentment. "You ruined everything?" I replied, "No, you did." They let her out into the flashing red and blue lights. Neighbors peeked from their porches again, just like the night she sent her fake cops after me. But this time, she wasn't shouting orders. She was silent. A few days later, I testified in court. The judge called her actions a deliberate abuse of trust and power. She got 6 years in prison. Her cousin got 8. The stolen funds were returned to the residents, and the fake HOA was officially dissolved. The following week, the same old man who had clapped before came to my porch with a small gift, a wooden sign that said, "No HOA zone." He laughed. "Maybe hang it up just in case," I smiled. I think that's the best idea I've heard all year. But as I looked across the neighborhood, I couldn't help but think about how easily people can be fooled when someone acts like they're in charge. Karen didn't need real power. She just needed people to believe she had it. And maybe that's the scariest part. We spend so much time trusting uniforms, titles, and signs that we forget to ask who put them there. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool wind move across the quiet street. The same one that used to feel tense now finally felt peaceful. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It whispers, through the silence that follows when truth finally wins. And as I closed my gate, I thought to myself, what would you have done if someone showed up at your door pretending to be the law? Would you have trusted them, or asked to see the truth first?